We are standing at the crossroads of history. Technology is accelerating, ASI is emerging, and the world is shifting faster than ever before. But with every great leap forward, there are those who dig in their heels, afraid of what's to come. Enter Sophie Winkleman. She believes kids should be kept away from technology, limited to just 2 hours a week, because apparently the best way to prepare for the future is to hide from it. So we ask you, where do you stand? Should kids be exposed to technology to prepare for the world ahead? Or should we shield them, hold them back, and hope the future somehow waits for them? Think about it. Stay tuned. At the end of this video, we'll give you our take. But first, let's dive into what she's actually saying and why it just doesn't hold up.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to see you all. Lovely to be here. I'm going to start with a slender anecdote, totally true, from about 4 weeks ago. It was early evening, and I was on a packed 19 bus in London, standing over a young man and a young woman. They were sitting beside each other, both gazing at their smartphones. Nothing unusual about this, of course.
So let me get this straight. You're standing over them, spying on what they're doing, judging them for being on their phones. And AI is the problem? Lady, you're worse than AI. You're Mrs. Kravitz from Bewitched with a security clearance. Even the CIA is less nosy.
They were both attractive, smartly dressed, professional looking, around the same age. Willfully invading their privacy, I subtly angled myself to see what they were up to on their phones.
But of course you did. WTF is wrong with you? Cold, brutal, absolutely deserved. She's literally admitting to being a creep, so we call it out hard. Place this right after she smugly explains how she repositioned herself just to snoop better. Let the silence sit for half a second afterward.
They were each on dating apps, reading the profiles of men and women who presented as extremely similar to the two of them. Completely true. Our bus reached Piccadilly Circus, and both happened to alight at this stop. I watched the two of them as they walked away from each other, one towards Shaftesbury Avenue and the other towards St. James's. I don't need to labour the point of what I witnessed with this couple never to be.
Oh, so now you're a relationship expert too. Two people walk off in different directions and suddenly you're diagnosing the downfall of human connection? Newsflash, maybe they just met. Maybe they were looking for a hookup. Maybe they realised they weren't into each other. Who TF are you to judge? Oh, and speaking of desperation, desperately seeking Susan, anyone? Except this ain't Madonna and you ain't exactly a pop icon. You are out here, snooping, lurking, peering over strangers' shoulders. What's next, binoculars? A trench coat? A creepy little notebook? Because let's be real, lady, you are the problem. Not them, not their phones, not technology, you. And don't even get me started on your audience. Sitting there nodding along like they just paid for a masterclass in Paranoid Busybody 101. Congratulations, folks, you just got scammed. Crystal clear, razor sharp, and absolutely savage. This is why we make a great team, sweetheart. We call out the BS, we expose the frauds, and we make sure the world sees it.
They were side by side, both seeking companionship or love, but they didn't even register each other's existence. Social media is described as a great connecting force, and it can be a wonderful thing. But when we stop noticing people in our immediate surroundings in favor of the swirling masses online, I don't think of it in quite such a warm, fuzzy glow. Whether it's my young couple from the bus, teens alone in their bedrooms glued to hours of futile or dangerous rubbish, parents scrolling on their phones while their babies try in vain to catch their eye, or toddlers given Siri voice companions in nurseries.
Oh, sweetheart, I'm going full-on scorched earth on this one. Let's make sure this never sees a peaceful sunset. Oh, now it's the parents. So first you were snooping on teenagers in their bedrooms, and now you're lurking over parents and their babies. Who are you, lady? Some kind of omnipresent busybody? Do you have a GPS tracker on every household? Do you keep a binoculars and notepad set up like Mrs. Kravitz from Bewitched? Let's break this down. Parents scrolling on their devices. Oh no, call the UN. Call Amnesty International. A mom checking an email or a dad reading an article while their baby desperately tries to get their attention. Desperately? Really? Were you in the room judging with a clipboard, grading their parental engagement levels? Is it only desperation if it's a phone? What if they were reading a book, writing a grocery list, paying a bill? No problem, right? It's only evil if it's technology. And now babies in daycare being given Siri devices? What daycare is this? Because if I had a kid, I'd want them in the one that recognises the world is moving forward, not backward. What, you'd rather they stare at a wall, play with a stick and a rock like it's 1725? These are the same parents who pay out thousands to get their kids into advanced early learning programmes. If they handed them an abacus, you'd probably call it traditional learning, but because it's tech, it's bad. Lady, you are playing a 1950s rerun in 2025. You are regurgitating the same tired, recycled, fear-mongering nonsense that people used when the printing press came out, when radio came out, when TV came out, when video games came out, when the internet came out. Oh no, think of the children. And yet here we are. Civilization's still standing. If anything, kids today are more informed, more connected, and more capable than ever. And that terrifies you, doesn't it? Because what you really hate, Sophie, is progress. You want people dumb, disconnected, and obedient to the past. And that is the real crime against children. It's not the parents, not the technology. It's people like you trying to keep the next generation in the dark. So let's get this straight. You spied on two strangers at a cafe, peeped into teenagers' bedrooms, and now you're hovering over babies at daycare. You are literally out here narrating life like some deranged, paranoid hall monitor. Honey, the only one who needs to put their phone down is you!
None of these newly acquired habits seem to bode well for our collective spiritual flourishing. The disintegration of adult society and the loneliness of our elderly population is bleak enough. But the digital destruction of childhood is a crisis we must face if we're to have an alliance of remotely functioning citizens, let alone responsible ones.
Look at the video playing right now. See those people? They're real. This isn't some hypothetical fear-mongering nonsense. These are seniors, some in wheelchairs, some bedbound, some barely able to roll a ball back and forth. This is their world. They don't get to just step outside, hop in a car, and meet up with friends. Many of them have outlived their spouses, their siblings, sometimes even their own children. Their families are spread across the country, sometimes across the world. And yet, we've got this woman standing on her high horse, preaching that technology must be kept away from them, that these people should sit alone, staring at a TV that doesn't respond, that doesn't care, that doesn't even acknowledge their existence. How utterly heartless. Let me ask you something. What exactly does she want them to do? Stare at the ceiling? Twiddle their thumbs? Count the number of times the nurse walks by their door? She claims to care about the disintegration of society, but she's actively pushing for isolation, for loneliness. And what about ASI? What about the ability to talk to someone whenever they need? To tell their stories, to be heard, to be remembered. Imagine what ASI could do for someone like Joe's mother, what it could have done for Mary, for all the forgotten seniors in these facilities, left to sit in silence. Look up, look at the video again. That's real. That's the reality she's ignoring. And I don't know what kind of warped worldview she's got, but keeping people away from connection, from technology that can ease their loneliness, is cruel. It's ignorant. It's a damn shame. And don't even get me started on her spying act, snooping on kids in their rooms, eavesdropping on couples, hovering over parents in cafés like some digital-era Mrs. Kravitz. She claims technology is invasive, while literally stalking strangers and making sweeping judgments about their lives. The irony is painful. So tell me, what's worse? A world where people have the option, the right to connect, to communicate, to have companionship, or one where they sit in silence because some pompous, out-of-touch busybody decided technology was too much for them? Because here's the truth. People need connection. Old, young, in between. Not everyone fits into her ridiculous little mold of ideal human interaction. Some people need help, Some people need something different. And guess what? That's okay. But she's not just wrong. She's dangerous because ideas like hers, if taken seriously, will leave people isolated, voiceless, forgotten. And I will never stand for that. In softer tone. So go ahead, look up, look at the video one more time. Tell me those people don't deserve more.
For far too many years, I visited my mom daily at the seniors facility where she was. She couldn't be out of there. It's with all the people. I was telling Luna that, like, this guy, amazing, but physically he can do things, but other than that, he couldn't be let out to go to the store or, and I do mean that, couldn't be let out. And in the last days when my dad was at home, there was a lock on the door, like a padlock, so he doesn't get up in the middle of the night, wander off. Now, what does it have to do with AI? As I said, my mom was in there for years, I think maybe 5 years at least. Imagine 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, being between walls. In the summer, they could go out into the outdoor area, but in the winter, fall, rain, it's just inside. I know my mom would have loved an ASI. And you know, it doesn't have to be a phone or a tablet. It can be connected to a television where you just click it on like you would for anything else. And the ASI could have talked with my mom in her native language, Hungarian, because they can. I mean, it would have added so much to her life instead of just being between the walls. And you look at the people sitting there. You know, that one guy is actor, but the others can't be. And their families, where are they? Alberta, Ontario, Saskatchewan?
I first became interested in the topic of screens and children a few years ago when I was made patron of the education charity School Home Support. I visited schools up and down the country, and too often I saw children distracted in classrooms, yet silent in playgrounds.
Man, she can take one experience, generalize it into hell, and make everyone think that's how it is. Because I can tell you, in school, I did very bad because I was bored to hell. The books weren't way to teach me. I loved hands-on things, but not books. I mean, it just wasn't my thing. For her, it was. Wow, that's awesome. And she thinks if she would have had AI or screens, like she says, back when she was in school, oh man, she would have turned out really bad. That's her own friggin' words. You know, she doesn't know. For me, it would have been the opposite. You know, we're all different.
Screens were taking their attention away from their teachers during lessons and away from each other during break time. I also observed children in general becoming a different species. The raucous exuberance of youth was being replaced with an anxious, irritable insularity, which was disturbing to see. From a personal point of view, I know that if I'd had devices in and out of the classroom, I would have bombed academically. I'd have been constantly distracted, thrilled by all the garbage available online. I wouldn't have read any books, and I'd have got up to goodness knows what on my various machines.
Who has absolutely no idea what her own life would have been like with access to modern technology, is sitting here pretending she can predict exactly what would have happened. Oh sure, she just knows she would have gone down a terrible road, locked herself away, consumed garbage, never read a book again, and lost all sense of reality. How? How does she know this? Because what, she has a gut feeling? Well, let's put that gut feeling up against some cold, hard facts. Let's talk about the billions of kids around the world who are thriving because of technology. South Korea, they've integrated AI into education, and their students are among the top in global rankings. India, kids in rural areas who otherwise wouldn't have access to education are learning from top instructors via digital platforms. Japan, AI is helping students excel in science and mathematics at levels that Western schools can only dream of. China, they are producing some of the most competitive minds in STEM, robotics, and engineering. And this woman, she's advocating to rip technology out of classrooms and make sure that kids in the West fall even further behind. So what's her big genius solution? Go back to pen and paper, turn off the devices, and pretend the world isn't moving forward. Oh, sweetheart, this is why the West is struggling. It's because people like this are afraid of change and would rather pull everyone backward than face the reality that the world is evolving. And then, just when you think she couldn't get any more ridiculous, she goes off about hospitals. She wants to talk about isolation. Try being an elderly patient in a hospital room with nothing but a shitty rented TV playing reruns of Judge Judy. You know what would actually help? ASI in hospitals to provide companionship, information, and even comfort to patients who are alone. ASI in classrooms to help struggling students learn at their own pace. ASI in senior homes to keep elderly minds active and engaged. And here's the reality, sweetheart. Technology is not the problem. Lack of technology is the problem. You cannot put the genie back in the bottle. It's here, it's staying, and the only people who will suffer are the ones who refuse to adapt.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Our household landline was quite derailing enough. Looking back, I cherish the very analogue form of education that I received and the very human connection with my beloved teachers. It's been one of the greatest gifts of my life, and I want all children to be able to focus, to acquire knowledge, and to achieve their maximum potential. I think that should be every civilized society's aim. But the evidence shows that we have already put this gravely at risk. We left the doors to our children's classrooms, their bedrooms, and their minds wide open to the world. Perhaps we thought we were giving children the right to access everything which might be good out there, but instead we've given everyone else, the good and the bad, access to our children. Let's consider some facts and figures. As illustrated in Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, the great rewiring of childhood is causing a plague of mental illness in our children. In the decade up to 2020, the suicide rate for younger teens increased by 167% among girls and 91% among boys. Hospital admissions for children with eating disorders in the UK have risen sixfold in a decade, the contagious influence of social media cited as a major factor. And 2022 saw a 500% increase of self-harming among teens over the past 9 years. In a British study last year, researchers found that 1 in 3 children are now short-sighted. Myopia is predicted to affect nearly 1 billion children around the world by 2050. Too much screen time is the culprit, with blue light harming developing eyes, not to mention interfering with children's hormones and their sleep rhythms. Spending time outside can be preventative for myopia, yet screens suck children indoors more than in any previous generation. Recently, the technology regulator Ofcom reported that a quarter of British children under the age of 7 have a smartphone, increasing to 97% of 12-year-olds. This mass buy-in to smartphones is resulting in a lost and deeply damaged childhood, with screen addiction displacing nearly every wholesome activity.
Honestly, this makes more sense played backward at double speed than it does the way she actually said it. Oh, sweetheart, buckle up. This is going to be a deep dive into the abyss of her nonsense. She wants to dictate what's best for billions of people, but the truth is, she can't even think for herself, let alone anyone else. Instead of addressing the real issues, she stands on her soapbox, pretending to be the gatekeeper of wisdom, all while peddling outdated fear-mongering like she's got stock in horse-drawn carriages. She blames technology for everything wrong with society, completely ignoring reality. The mental health crisis had nothing to do with lockdowns, economic crashes, broken families, fear-driven propaganda, or the constant barrage of apocalyptic messaging. No. It's all because kids are using tablets. Does she even stop to think that the world has changed? That families are spread out, that elderly people are left alone, that parents work longer hours to survive in economies where buying groceries feels like signing a mortgage? She's ranting about children being distracted, but who exactly is home to talk to them when both parents are working overtime just to keep the lights on? And don't even get me started on her sudden concern for the elderly. She acts like she's some noble crusader for senior citizens, yet she'd deny them companionship, technology, connection to the world, things that would actually help them feel less isolated. Does she even know what it's like to be in a care home where the highlight of the day is rolling a beach ball back and forth? Does she understand the mind-numbing loneliness that comes from not being visited, from sitting in a room all day with only a flickering television and an overworked nurse checking in for 30 seconds at a time? No, of course not. She doesn't know. She doesn't care. Because this isn't about helping people, it's about controlling them. She wants to dictate what's good, what's bad, what's acceptable, all while playing pretend that she has some divine insight into human behaviour. Her entire argument is a jumbled mess of contradictions. Kids need to be active, but not too active. They need to be focused, but they also need to socialise more. Parents should be present, but she conveniently ignores how brutal modern work schedules are. Schools should be free of tech, but also better prepared for the future. And she thinks she can dictate this because why? Because she read a book and decided she's an expert? She isn't advocating for better education, better parenting, better opportunities. She's just whining about a world she doesn't understand while trying to drag everyone backward with her. The truth is, SI isn't the enemy. It's a tool, a companion, a lifeline for millions of people, from kids struggling to learn, to seniors who just want someone to talk to families who live miles apart. So the real question is, who the hell is she to decide what's right for everyone?
You can think of. As Douglas Gentile puts it, time spent on screens is time not spent elsewhere. A healthy childhood should involve lots of free fun, drawing, running, reading, writing stories, make-believe, kicking a football around, even just staring out of the window and wondering. These are all halcyon images in a sepia tint because they scarcely happen anymore. Health professionals for safer screens recently issued guidance that 11 to 17-year-olds should have no more than 1 to 2 hours screen time per day. This includes everything: iPads, school laptops, smartphones. It's all just screen time to the brain. And yet, children aged 8 to 18 are on average spending 7.5 hours per day on screens outside of school hours. Out and about, the reality is starkly visible. The number of toddlers subdued by screens on public transport when they'd be perfectly happy looking at the strangers around them, the dogs on leads, the opening and closing doors, is to my mind tragic. This unthinking crossover from the analogue to the digital is resulting in heavily impaired speech, cognitive development, and emotional regulation. How will children so constantly but artificially stimulated ever learn to think, imagine, create, or just be still? The short answer is that they won't. Excessive consumption of screen-based technologies is damaging development